But first, Michelle Bowman, the Fed's top regulatory official, thinks her colleagues should be allowed to own a little bit of crypto. Not like a whale bag or anything, but at least enough to understand how to click send without filing a FOIA request. Now, right now, Fed staff and their spouses are banned from owning crypto, ETFs tied to crypto, or even shares of crypto companies. That rule came down in 2022 after 3 Fed officials got busted making some suspiciously well-timed trades during COVID. Bowman's argument: you can't regulate what you don't understand, and you can't understand crypto if you've never actually used it. She even put it in ski terms. You wouldn't trust someone to teach skiing if they never put on skis. Right now, the Fed is basically a ski school where the instructors are standing in flip-flops. Bowman says the ban is hurting recruitment as well. Why would a crypto-savvy examiner work at the Fed if it means they're not allowed to hold the asset class that they actually know about? Her broader point is that regulators are paralyzed by caution while the financial system evolves around them. Blockchain, stablecoins, AI, the tech, it's already here. The Fed can either embrace it and help shape the rules or get bypassed completely. She pointed to the newly passed Genius Act as proof that stablecoins are now a fixture in the financial system, which means ignoring them isn't an option. And let's not forget, this is happening under Trump's administration, where regulators have been told to stop hiding behind reputational risk and to embrace blockchain instead of treating it like radioactive waste. Bowman is even being floated as a possible successor to Jerome Powell when his term ends in 2026. Imagine that, a Fed chair who actually understands what a Bitcoin transaction is. Crypto at the Fed? Who had that on their 2025 bingo card? We're bringing Julian back. Julian, Michelle Bowman says Fed staff should be able to own crypto so they can regulate it better. Do you buy that argument, or is it a slippery slope to conflicts of interest?
Look, first, let me say a couple of things in support of Michelle Bowman. She gave a great speech in Jackson Hole a couple of days ago. She, supportive of Bitcoin and crypto and stablecoins and tokenization. She also, I think, very importantly addressed this reputational risk question, talking about the ending of the Fed's novel, it's called the Novel Supervision Program, to essentially supervise, that's the euphemism, supervise essentially any banking activities related to crypto, right? So this is coming to an end, and it's great, and Michelle Bowman is supportive of that. Right, let's talk about this question of owning crypto. And I think before we even get into that specifically, I would say it's important to have a little bit of a history lesson, a recent history lesson on what the Fed has done with respect to senior staff members and let's call it potential conflicts of interest. I want to rewind the clock to October of 2021. I think it was actually October the 21st, an auspicious number of 2021. The Federal Reserve put out a press release announcing that they had updated their policy with respect to senior officials owning individual stocks and other things too. But it's really, can they own stocks or can they not? And they said, no, was the answer to that question. New policy, everyone has to divest, at least the senior folks have to divest of all these individual stocks. Now, this is October 21st, 2021. The Bitcoin price, by the way, on that day, $62,000. We're talking about the top of the market in 2021. Okay, now a little bit further ahead, not that far, to March, I believe, of 2022. What happens? The Fed ends the period of stimulus that had characterized their policy for the past couple of years before that, hikes rates, and nukes the market, ends the bull run, everything crashes. I want to point out there how, I guess, coincidentally fortunate that was for all the senior folks at the Fed who were forced, of course, because of conflict of interest reasons, forced to divest of everything at the absolute top of the market in 2021, right before they hiked rates and crashed the market for everybody else. That's the history lesson. Okay. What does that mean now about separate question. Should Fed staff be able to own crypto for the sake of knowing more about it to regulate it? I think it's I think it's a little bit silly, honestly. I think of course you'll know more about it if you hold it and transact with it and everything else. But of course, that's going to introduce conflicts of interest as well. Um, Ultimately, what side of the fence do I come down on? I don't know, but I think the idea that it's a completely kind of benevolent, pragmatic approach to just kind of informing regulators to the best of our abilities about what they're doing. Look, there's no perfect solution here, but the track record of the Fed on this is not good. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, that feels about right. Do you feel that the fact that right now, because the Fed is basically banning staff from touching anything crypto related, has that slowed down regulatory understanding of Bitcoin in DC at all, you think?
I doubt it. I think these decisions are made by a small number of senior people, and they are influenced by many things more powerful than, do they have a few sats in a hot wallet on Coinbase or something? Like, yeah, of course, it's kind of important, maybe longer term, and the more people own digital assets, the more they become accustomed to them and familiar with them, and it becomes part of everyday life. And all of this is true, I wouldn't think that it's been a roadblock for
Fair.
for kind of pro crypto regulation and sentiment amongst regulators. In fact, my guess is they're all pro digital assets, right? They're all smart people. They're all been in the financial industry for decades, a lot of the time, right? On a person, so I think the likelihood is there's probably a big divergence between personal sentiment and feelings and public policy, and things like this. I don't think are going to be a huge difference maker unless. I think there's one kind of caveat here, which I think Michelle Bowman was talking about: small amounts, de minimis amounts of crypto. And sure, if we just keep it at like a tiny amount and you just execute a few transactions and see what it's like, that's one thing. On the other hand, if it's kind of a free for all and the floodgates are open, the shackles are off, then it only makes sense to me that the folks at the single institution most responsible for, let's say, influencing asset prices will inevitably want to take a personal stake in that process as well.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't think I can handle Nancy Pelosi front running the market any more than she does. How is she worth so much money? She makes like 170 grand a year. It doesn't make sense.
She's a
It's not
genius.
right there.
She's the Warren Buffett of
Yeah.
Congress.
She really is. She's just incredible, that Pelosi. Now, Julian, if Bowman eventually becomes Fed chair in 2026, how much do you think that could really shift the tone of U.S. monetary policy when it comes to Bitcoin?
Well, there's one big thing that's going to shift the Fed's approach here, which is cutting rates. Right? Like that's what we're talking about. And the White House, from President Trump through to Bill Pulte at the Federal Housing Financing Authority and others, have not been shy about their desire to see rates come down, going so far as to, in fact, I think just this week, file another kind of referral for criminal investigation for another one of the Federal Reserve board members. Hey, look, I'm not saying it's directly related to rates coming down, but I think you and I, Hank, we know that these things don't happen in isolation, right? So there is an enormous amount of political pressure for rates to come down. Now, who's going to be responsible for appointing the next chair of the Federal Reserve? Well, we also know that that's going to be President Trump himself. I think we can see the direction that the winds are shifting here. Powell, to his credit, is holding out and resisting some of this political pressure. I mean, he's doing his job and doing it admirably in that sense. But as you mentioned, his term ends in, I think, May of next year. And it's pretty likely that whoever takes that seat next, whether it's Michelle Bowman or someone else, they're going to be a lot closer to the president than Mr. Powell is right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they end up selecting, but I guess we still got, what is it, like 10 months or something away. So we'll see if Jerome, how he holds the line for the remainder of his time in the seat, but we'll see. I don't know. Stay tuned, Julian. We got one more story we're going to go over here, so I'll be back with you in just a sec. As SoFi, the digital bank better known for refinancing your student loans into a lifelong prison sentence, is suddenly doing something revolutionary, and that is embracing Bitcoin Lightning. SoFi is officially the first U.S. bank to integrate Bitcoin's Lightning Network and universal money addresses, which means cheap, instant global transfers instead of getting fleeced by Western Union and their generous 7% cut. Here's the deal. You see, SoFi customers will be able to send US dollars through the app, which convert into Bitcoin in real time, zip across the Lightning Network, and land in the recipient's bank account as their local currency. No middlemen, no bankers skimming fees, no excuses. SoFi's CEO Anthony Noto says this isn't just convenient for their members sending money to loved ones abroad, it's a meaningful improvement to their lives. Translation, Bitcoin is doing more for the working class than most banks ever have. The service launches later this year, starting in Mexico, where remittances are a $740 billion global market that traditional finance has been robbing blind for decades. Lightspark, founded by former PayPal president David Marcus, is the muscle behind all of this. Their universal money address system makes payments work like email. Type in an address, hit send, and boom, Lightning handles all the dirty work for you. Costs will be below the national average, exchange rates will be shown before you send, and it'll work 24/7 for SoFi's 11.7 million members. Try getting that from your local bank branch that closes at 3:45 on a Friday, okay? Coinbase integrated Lightning with Spark last year, and within 12 months, 15% of its Bitcoin transactions were running through Lightning rails. The demand is there. Even Brazil's new bank with 100 million customers signed up with Lightspark back in 2024, but they're still dragging their heels on actually launching the thing. Meanwhile, SoFi is out here putting Bitcoin at the center of cross-border payments, while Wall Street banks are still running blockchain pilots that amount to PowerPoints and buzzwords. Bitcoin isn't the future of payments, it's the present, and SoFi, they just proved it. We're bringing Julian back. Julian, SoFi integrating Lightning is a first for U.S. banking. How big of a deal do you think this is in terms of mainstream financial adoption of Bitcoin going forward?
Well, it's a great question. I think one of the features of this particular partnership, and indeed the kind of the Lightspark universal money address technology here, it's actually that it kind of abstracts the Bitcoin part of the equation away from end users, right? So as you mentioned, we're talking about converting from one fiat currency to another. It is, of course, using the Lightning Network, which is very important. But I guess the importance of it for me is not so much that it's going to start orange pilling people, but what it is rather is a demonstration of, I think, what many of us in Bitcoin have known for a few years now, which is the potential of the Lightning Network to do just this and to radically improve on existing payment rails for things like remittances and cross-border payments. So that's really exciting. It's really exciting for the development of the Lightning Network. Lightning it's a little bit like, it's a little bit like The Undertaker. The wrestler. Stay with me here, Frank. But he's like, you've probably seen this GIF. It's like the meme of he's kind of lying down in the coffin, and kind of everyone thinks he's out of it and he's dead, and then he sits up. He sits back up. This is the Lightning Network. People keep counting it out, but it keeps growing and it keeps coming back for more, and adoption is continuing. And it's not the only second layer now of Bitcoin, but as Lightspark are proving, the potential here is enormous. So it's great for Bitcoin in that sense. So that's what I think about that.